Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of our podcast. You'll notice that we've changed the name of the podcast for this season, and the reason is that now we've got two businesses in our stable. We want to be talking not just about the process of buying businesses, but also about owning and growing businesses. I'm standing outside Excel Engineering, which is the most recent acquisition that we've made into our group as part of a consortium. Excel's a 50-person engineering fabrication business based in Cheshire. It's a really exciting time here. It's a really exciting time for us. In this season, Bethan and I are going to be working together to hopefully bring you some really exciting discussions and some great guests. You can tell the sun's shining here in Cheshire because my glasses have turned dark, which is always a great sign here in England. It doesn't happen every day, but in between the rainstorms today, we got some sunshine, so that's great too. But without further ado, what we want to do is move on now to episode 1 of season 2.
Okay, why don't you start by giving your listeners a bit of an update, as it's been a few weeks since you last spoke to them, so tell them what's going on.
It has been a few weeks, probably longer than I would have hoped for. Essentially, what's been happening is that we have been finishing our second acquisition. I'll say finishing. We've been the whole point of the change and the nature of this program. We've been completing the first phase, which is actually acquiring the business. Yes, we acquired a £4 million turnover engineering business, which fits in well with our strategy. But it's been pretty time-consuming exercise because not only have we had to deal with the whole negotiation process with the sellers, but also in buying the business, we've done that as part of a joint venture. So it makes it a bit more complicated because we've got partners on our side of the table too.
Interesting. Okay, and why, for those out there who may be, putting together deals and going on their own joint venture journeys, what are some of the pros and cons do you feel between doing a joint venture and acquisition?
Well, the benefits are that you get a broader skill set on your side of the table because you've got someone else sat alongside you who probably has a different background and skill set, which is hopefully complementary to yours. So that's good. And also, once you get into the business, you've got another pair of hands. And as we'll come on and talk about, that can be quite useful. The downsides are, well, I suppose you end up owning, say, half the shares rather than all of them, or you don't, you're giving away a percentage of the ownership, which means that ultimately, if the business is resold, you get less. And the other downside is the complexity, because you've just got other things to deal with because you've got to spend time agreeing stuff on your side of the table as well as dealing with the people on the other side of the table. It worked and we got there. And in this particular case, we didn't set out looking for a joint venture, but what we found out was that someone that we knew was also bidding for the same business. And it just made sense to join forces rather than competing against each other. So that's what we decided to do. And we'll see. I mean, it takes time because you end up working with someone that you don't necessarily know very well. And it does add a layer of complexity, but it also adds a layer of experience and expertise as well. So we will see, but it's interesting, and it's certainly a way to do it, and it potentially frees up some of my time to focus on other things as well.
And okay, let's go back to the business itself then. So tell us about the business and why you felt this business was a good fit for the
Okay, yeah.
company.
This business is a classic sort of business that I would look for. It was owned by three people, all of whom wanted to retire. So a retirement sale. The business has been going for 31 years. It's profitable, it's stable, it's got a good customer base. But also looking at it from the outside, we could see opportunities to improve the business, to increase revenues, to increase margins. So good growth potential, as well as being a good business from the start. So that's why, and also the fact that it's an engineering business, which is the sector that we decided that we're going to focus on, certainly in the short term. So, and the other thing is it's quite local. It's 12 miles from home. So that makes it very easy. So also it now forms the corporate HQ as well as being one of the operating businesses. So it gives us a base to work from. So I'm actually working out of here full time.
Okay, and so now that you own the business, it's a fairly biggish size business, 4 million turnover, with 50 odd employees. Like you say, you obviously get some information going through the acquisition process during the due diligence stage. But how do you actually go about walking in the door on day one and like figuring out what you need to do, how, like, where to start that process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because as it happens, we've walked in through the door at a time when there are a lot of problems and issues in the business that have just happened to appear right now. So to say the place is on fire is probably a bit of an exaggeration, but there are some fairly serious things that we've got to deal with on top of getting to grips with the business and the people and everything else. So it's an interesting time to come in. I mean, the process essentially was the same as we followed with our first acquisition last year, because the people who work in the business don't know you're coming. In this case, there's a small management team of 3 people who were told literally a couple of days before the deal completed that the sale was happening, but we'd never met them. They didn't know who the hell we were. And the rest of the people who work here have no idea. So you literally appear on the first day. In this case, because of COVID, social distancing, we had to get everyone outside in the car park. And the 3 outgoing owners stood in front of them and said, "We just want to let you know we decided we're going to retire, and we now sold the business to these guys." And that was it. So we had to introduce ourselves to everybody and try and do it in a way that was as non-threatening as possible, give them the reassurances that they wanted, because obviously in a takeover situation, the first concern is, am I going to lose my job? So it's trying to reassure people that, no, you're not going to lose your job. And actually, we're here to grow the business, to make it better, to create more jobs. So that's the message. But then they look at you and go, yeah, right. So the key thing then is to be seen, to be doing stuff that backs up what you say. And that's really been, I mean, the deal was completed, I think it's 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks, 3 weeks on Thursday. So we've already started to deliver on some things we talked about, and being seen around the place, being visible, talking to people, and doing things which are consistent with what you've told them you want to do. And so far, it's working well. We've not got any negativity from the workforce. A lot of people have worked here for a long time, which is fairly typical with these businesses. You know, the people have been here 15 years, 20 years. So they're very used to a certain structure. They're very used to a certain group of people who they're reporting to. And the people who owned this business are very different to us. They were hands-on engineers. Two of them, at least out of the three, would regularly be down on the shop floor, wearing overalls and making things. Whereas obviously we can't do that. So we have to win their respect in other ways, and show them that we've got different skills and different things to bring to the party. And hopefully we've started to deliver on that already. It's early days, things could still go horribly wrong, but we've done a lot of listening, and then we've already made some early decisions and tried to fix some things and support the managers. There was a bit of an issue here where the owners they appointed managers, but then not deliberately, but they undermined them by allowing the guys on the shop floor to go behind the backs of the managers and appeal to the owners if they didn't like what the managers were saying. And that left the managers feeling very exposed and undermined. So one of the key messages in the early stages has been to the managers to say, we're here to help you, we're here to support you. And if you say something and make a decision, then no one is going to go behind your back. No one is going to come to us and undermine that, because our answer is, well, the managers have said it, so that's what it is. And that seems to have worked well so far. So yeah, I mean, it's early days. Lots of things can happen. I think the other good thing, in a way, the fact that there are problems right now inside the business, there's basically some of the equipment that's quite core to the production process is not working. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to get it fixed. And it helps, because although it's bad that it's not working and that is impacting on the profitability of the business in the short term, the guys can see us in action. They can see how we're dealing with it. They can see that we're getting to grips with the problem. So that's good, because it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And it's about and this is the other lesson I learned, actually. I got told off about a week in, and I actually got told off by one of the guys on the shop floor who said to me, look, you seem like a nice chap, but you've got a problem because you're spending your time sat in the office and the rest of the guys here don't know who the hell you are and haven't seen you. So you need to get out here. And I took that on board. So now every day, whether I've got a reason to do it or not, every day I'm out on the shop floor walking around. And it's just smiling, saying good morning to people, having a bit of a laugh and a joke with them. I mean, it's interesting how it works. I mean, here's a great example. There's a bit of a culture issue where people don't really care as much as they should do about what's going on around them and about the business. This is grassroots. And the way that you can see that is they leave stuff lying around. And some of it can be dangerous because it's stuff that people can fall over, basically. So they leave stuff lying around. And I was down there yesterday. There's one particular area of the workshop which you've got to walk through it to get into another part. You've got to walk through it to get to the paint shop. So I'm walking through and there's shit everywhere. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, should I? But anyway, there's stuff everywhere. Piled up in the walkway, and it's quite difficult to physically get through. And I just turned to the supervisor on that section and said to him, this place looks like my daughter's bedroom. I said, I expect this at home. I said, bloody hell, I've had years of this. It looks just like my daughter's bedroom. And I got through and went away. I walked through the same bit this morning. It was clear of stuff. And the guy turned to me and he said, doesn't look like your daughter's bedroom today, does it?
Funny.
So it just shows just by, you don't have to go and shout at people and you don't have to be unpleasant. Just stuff like that just helps them if they know you, they don't want to let you down. You know, if they feel a connection with you, they don't want to disappoint you. So it's just trying to build those connections. And actually, the first time I did it, it felt really awkward. I didn't know who the hell anybody was. I had no idea. So I just walked around, smiled at a couple of people, said hello, and I was back in the office in about 2 minutes because I wasn't there for any reason. I was literally just walking around the place. Now, you know, already, I don't know, 10 days later, I know who people are. And you know, there's a lot more to talk about just as you're walking around. People engage with me.
Well, it's the Alex Ferguson methodology, isn't it? Where, you know, you learn everyone's name, you send everyone flowers on their birthday. It's that connection, isn't it?
I think, and actually the other thing about the Fergie method of management is trying to learn that different people need different things.
Yeah.
You know, some people need a foot up the backside, other people need an arm around the shoulder, and it's trying to figure out who's who. And you know, we've got one senior guy down there who runs our laser operation, which is absolutely the core of the business. And there's been some issues in the past, and I've adopted the Cantona approach, as in the way that Fergie managed Cantona, because it's like people telling me he's a difficult character, he's temperamental, will storm out, and this, that, and the other. And I've just done the Cantona method, which is put an arm around his shoulder and spend time talking to him and understand him. You know, and he's a good bloke. He's got a sense of humor. We have nice chats. I've spent more time talking to him than I've anyone else down there because of the problems we've got going on at the moment. But that's what he needs. He wants to feel important, which is fine. And he wants someone to spend some time with him. And he is important. I mean, no one's irreplaceable. No one can hold the business to ransom. But on the other hand, we need to look after those people. So yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know, it's the first business we bought was 10 people. So it was a small business and it was very similar to what I'd been used to. This time it's 50 people, and that's all right. It's not 500 or 5,000, but it's very different to 10. It's more than 5 times more complicated. Let's put it that way. It's probably 25 times more complicated. So it is, and there's no infrastructure here. So if you want to get messages out to people, you know, we're about to send one out. Actually, it's a paper newsletter. That's the best way we can do it. Yeah. So, but we'll get around that. We'll get around that. It's just getting to grips with it and working out the best ways to communicate with people.
Okay. Well, there was tons in that. There's tons in that I want to ask you a bit more about. Yeah, and I'm glad that somebody's finally learned to listen to you and you tell them to clean the room.
Yeah, because you never did. Yeah.
You talk a lot about physical presence, and obviously walking around the workshop on a daily basis has already shown like massive effect. Obviously with COVID still being a thing, and I think this is just this is not really I suppose it's just a question of it's just a question of your opinion on more of a general issue, but obviously there's been a lot of people working remotely for a year and a half, and it doesn't seem from the way the previous owners were running the business, it sounded like a few people were working remotely, but most people are still trying to come into the workshop. So what is your opinion on the future of, you know, physical presence versus remote working? Like, does it have a place in your this business and future, the way you want to run things, or are you just wanting to have every physical?
Yeah, I think it depends what sort of business it is. I think it depends what sort of business it is. In an engineering or manufacturing business, the action takes place in the workshop. The guys in the workshop have to be physically there. There is no option for them to work remotely. They have to be physically there. And because they have to be physically there to manage it, lead it, grow it, develop it, you've got to be physically there as well. It's quite simple. You don't have, not necessarily all the time, but regular visible presence is really important. So in a business like this, my plan for the medium term is that the management team will be capable of doing on a day-to-day basis what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. So the level of presence and level of activity that I'm putting in right now is not going to be forever. But for now, it's absolutely vital. And I was trying to explain this to my joint venture partner, that physical presence as much of the time as possible is absolutely critical in the early stages. What we then need to do is to get the management team to kind of grow and adopt that space, and then we can wean people off seeing us every day. But for now, we can't. So, and it doesn't change things in the sense that the physical presence is still vital. It's just that it will be the management team's physical presence, not the owners.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've got a plan to go out and buy other businesses and grow the group. So I can't be here all the time, even though I say it's going to be my corporate HQ. So that helps with this business because I'll always have some degree of physical presence here. If you're running a services business where your entire workforce can work remotely, then that's different because everyone's on the same level. It's all about how the business runs. If the business can run remotely, then everybody can be remote. If the business has to be run from a physical facility, then people have got to be there. And anyone who isn't will be dislocated. You just can't help it. Stuff goes on. It has to be dealt with. The people who are not physically there to deal with it can't be involved in it. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, and I suppose that's an interesting point you make, is with this particular business model, with the acquisition business model, it's kind of irrelevant what COVID's doing, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to figure out how things are actually working, and you need to be able to build relationships with people, which, argument's sake, is probably better in person than over a Zoom call.
It is. It is. Especially in the early stages when you're trying to build rapport with people. One thing I've discovered is physical touch is really important. Reaching out and touching someone on the elbow, for example, it's a big thing. Just saying it's okay, it's all fine, everything's good.
Yeah.
Or you're having a laugh and a joke with someone, you reach out, you touch them on the arm. You can't do that on Zoom. I mean, I'm sure robotics will come into play at some point. You get a robot arm reaching out of your screen, but you just can't do it. So once you've established the relationships, you can maintain them from a distance, and you can do it, maintain them on a more occasional basis. But it's the building stage that really needs that physical presence. And there isn't really a substitute. Zoom's great. We're on it now, but it's not the same. It's not the same. So we use it as much as we can, but as I say, in a business which is a manufacturing or engineering, or a business where the actual production has to be done from a physical location, then everybody's got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about the importance of the kind of management, the three managers, I guess, sit below us. And obviously you've talked about how, you know, you're going through the process at the minute of getting to know them and like figuring out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and eventually, yeah, the goal is that you want to empower them to essentially be the highest level of manager in the room, so that they aren't as reliant on you, so that you can go off and buy other businesses and grow the empire further. There's a clear balance here between us coming in and making decisions and saying, these are our experiences, these are our expertise, and this is what we think is best. And then also empowering the people already in the business to come with their own ideas, and also make their own decisions. So when things are brand new, like what you're in, like week 2 or week 3 now of being there,
3
week 3,
yeah.
That's flown by. What is that balance like? Is it just like, are you consciously thinking, oh well, you know, are you consciously making the decisions of like, I'm going to suggest this, but then I need them to like meet me halfway, or like, how are you striking that balance between you bringing your own decisions and expertise and getting them to tell you what's best?
Okay, well, I think the starting point is you want your management team inside the business to be doing as much as possible. You want them to be taking as much responsibility as possible for as many things as possible. And then you're filling in the gaps, because the end game here is to have a business which is growing and thriving and that takes up as little of your time as possible. That's the end game, so that you can then either be playing golf or buying and running other businesses. So, because time is that's the thing, isn't it? That's the most precious asset that you have. So my view is that you want to, right from the start, be encouraging them to do as much as possible. And then what you're doing is inputting the stuff that they can't do. And to some extent, you'll have a pretty clear idea right from the beginning of what that is. But you've then just got to figure out where the gaps are and what you have to input. There's some occasions when everyone just stops talking and looks at you. And you have to, well, you make a decision actually, which is either you say to them, no, you decide, and we'll back you, or you say, right, okay, we're going to do this. And there's a mix of both. We had a conversation yesterday with the management team where we were asked the question, well, look, you know, these decisions are sat there in front of us. Do we make them? Do we have to ask you? What do we do? And the answer was, you make them. If you're not happy to make them, you ask us. Tell us what you're doing so we know. And then if we're not happy, we'll let you know. We'll talk about it. But no, you know, if there's a decision that relates to the management of the business, you do it, you make it, because that's what you're there for. And then they'll make some mistakes. They will make some mistakes, guaranteed. But that's how you learn. And the key thing then is how we respond to that situation when it happens. So, but you need them to start to build confidence, because they've been in a situation up to now where they've not really been allowed to have autonomy and authority. And we're saying, no, do it. But if you're not sure, ask us, that's fine. But we want you to do as much as possible. And it's actually, there's a couple of really good things in relation to our joint venture partner on this deal, because he believes exactly the same thing. I mean, he's got a bit of a military background, and there's some concepts in the military, and it's all this idea of, the guy who can see the enemy needs to make the decision, because they know what the situation is in front of them right then and there.
Yeah.
They're the one in the best position to see and to know, because they are the ones who've got the information. So we're on the same page there. We both believe the same thing. You delegate down to the lowest possible level, let the guys at the front, in the front line, make as many decisions as possible.
Yeah.
So it's that's the thing. It's trying to empower them. It's trying to give them the confidence that you're there if they need you, but not allowing them to push off all the decisions onto you.
Okay. And I think probably this is the biggest question that I would anticipate a lot of the listeners are thinking about as well. That's all to do with culture, because even if you wanted to, the culture couldn't stay the same, because your style, your expectations, what success looks like to you is going to be different to the previous owners, and they're going to be the behaviors and mindset and that you look for in your now new employees. So how do you take a workforce, like you said before, some of them have been here for 15 years, 20 years. How do you ask that person to change after all that time? And how do you get that collective movement of behavior change and mindset change to what is your way? How does that work?
Yeah, and change management is obviously a big area. Some people make a lot of money selling their expertise in that. But when it comes down to it, a lot of it's common sense, I think, which is, we've got a situation now which has been ongoing for a long time. So people are very used to that situation, but they're not all happy with it. They're certainly not all happy with all aspects of it. Some aspects of it suit them, but there is unhappiness. And there's a number of things where there's a sense of unfairness, that people are not being fairly treated, people are not being fairly recognized for what they do, people are not being fairly paid for what they do. So that gives us an opportunity to address that. Yes, it does need to change. And there are some pretty fundamental things in this business that need to change in order to create the foundation to move it forward and to grow it. Because at the moment, it's running flat out to produce what it's producing right now, but inefficient in terms of its use of people, inefficient in terms of its systems, and inefficient in terms of its use of machinery. So we've got to address all of that, because we need this business to be bigger and more profitable in order to achieve the objectives that we've got. So we need to build, this is the thing about change management, is you've got to create the burning platform. You've got to find those areas that people are unhappy with, and then kind of get your knife in there and twist it a bit, so that it's not moving from something that they know to something they don't know. What it's doing is it making them feel better about their situation. And that's how we need to address it, so that whatever we do is seen to be demonstrably fair, and actually puts puts as many people as possible into what they recognize as being a better situation for them.
Yeah.
So it's not changing people is not easy, but I have an absolutely fundamental belief, and this is backed by science, that you're never too old to change. Your brain retains neuroplasticity, well, forever, full stop, till you're dead. So physiologically, your brain is always capable of changing and always capable of absorbing new or creating new pathways. So this idea that you can't change, I'm too old to change, it's absolute nonsense. So that is a truth. Not everybody recognizes it. And that is that is a big problem, where people think they are incapable of change. That's probably the biggest problem you have. But to be honest, I haven't encountered that here yet, because I think that there are some fundamental unfairnesses in the way that people are treated. It's not malicious, it's not deliberate, but there are. And that gives us a good platform for making the changes we need to make.
Okay. And a final question for you. Obviously, this is the second acquisition into the Allied Global Engineering family. So what would you say are your kind of top learnings from the journey so far?
Well, I think the probably the biggest, I sort of knew this beforehand, but doing this deal has really brought it home, which is that buying businesses is not easy. And getting deals done is not easy, because there's a process you've got to go through, and there's so many points at which the whole thing can fall down. But once you buy a business, that is the start of the journey, not the end of it.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot more about what you do with the business after you've acquired it than there is about acquiring it in the first place. And as I say, I knew that, but this has really brought it home to me, because this business is much bigger than the first time around. And we've walked in at a time when there's a lot of stuff going on we've got to deal with very quickly. So I think that's probably the biggest learning, and that's actually why I wanted to change both the name of the show and also the focus of the show, because it's not just about how you buy a business. It's as much, if not more, about, okay, now you've got a business, what are you going to do? And these people who talk dismissively about having a buy and build strategy, I'm going to buy loads of businesses, it makes me laugh, because they're totally missing the point, which is that you can buy as many businesses as you like, but the magic is not in buying them, the magic is in running them. And there's someone I know well who is an expert on buying businesses, but bugger all about running them, and doesn't seem to realize that he's missing 70% of the picture, because yes, it's not easy buying them. Yes, there's lots of stuff you need to know, but I tell you what, there's a lot more stuff you need to know about what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
And I say that's why I just thought, well, you can only talk so much and for so long about how to buy a business. The really, really interesting stuff is all the follow on. Once you've got a business, what do you do with it?
Yeah. Fabulous. Well, I think that gives us a good meaty idea as to what's happening with your acquisition journey, and now we're firmly in the build phase, which is very exciting. Speaking as a member of your team, so yeah, I think it's been good to chat about it, and I'm sure this will help a lot of people.
I hope so. And I'm looking forward to moving on to the next phase of the podcast, as well as the next phase of the businesses, and then we will continue acquiring as well. And we're now into that stage where we've got to do lots of things in parallel, which is why we need the team.
Yes, and we have a great team. I don't say so myself.
We do have a great team.